For billions of years, the universe has kept its silence. Billions of galaxies, trillions of planets, and yet nothing. No signals, no messages, no proof that we're not alone. Until one day, scientists at MIT asked artificial intelligence the question humanity has been afraid to ask: why haven't aliens contacted us? And what Grok AI answered shocked everyone. What it revealed wasn't just a theory, it was a complete redefinition of what contact even means. This is the story of that moment. A story that begins not in the vast expanse of outer space, but in the corridors of one of Earth's most prestigious scientific institutions. It's a story about the Fermi Paradox, a question that has haunted scientists and philosophers for nearly 70 years. It's a story about artificial intelligence stepping into humanity's oldest cosmic mystery and offering an answer so profound that it's forced us to reconsider our entire understanding of intelligence itself. In late autumn of 2024, a small team of cognitive scientists and astrophysicists gathered at MIT. These weren't ordinary researchers. They were specialists in astrobiology, artificial intelligence, and the philosophy of consciousness. Their names were Dr. Priya Chandra Sekaran and Dr. Julian Marsh, leading a group that had been wrestling with questions that most people never even think to ask. Questions about life beyond Earth. Questions about why the universe seems so empty despite its impossible vastness. Questions about what it would mean if we finally made contact with something greater than ourselves. The inspiration for their experiment came from one of the most famous paradoxes in science. In 1950, physicist Enrico Fermi sat down with colleagues and posed a simple question: where is everybody? He was referring to extraterrestrial life. The numbers seemed overwhelming. Our galaxy alone contains roughly 200 billion stars. Current estimates suggest there are approximately 2 trillion galaxies in the observable universe. Within just our own Milky Way, astronomers have discovered billions of potentially habitable planets, worlds that could support life as we understand it. The statistical probability that Earth is the only planet with intelligent life seemed absurdly small, almost impossible. So Fermi asked, if intelligent aliens are so statistically probable, why haven't we detected any signals? Why haven't they visited us? Where is everybody? This question became known as the Fermi Paradox, and it has haunted humanity ever since. Scientists have proposed countless explanations over the decades. Perhaps intelligent life is incredibly rare, much rarer than we assume. Perhaps civilizations inevitably destroy themselves before reaching the technological level needed for interstellar communication. Perhaps they're all hiding from each other, afraid of hostile contact. Perhaps they're so far away that any communication would take thousands of years. Or perhaps, and this is the most unsettling possibility, they've already tried to contact us, and we simply haven't recognized it. The MIT team decided to approach this ancient paradox with a modern tool. They turned to Grok AI, an artificial intelligence system developed by xAI that had been making waves in the technology world. Grok isn't just any AI. It's built to be more capable and more willing to engage with complex, controversial, or unconventional ideas than many of its competitors. The team designed a sophisticated multi-phase prompting protocol, feeding Grok increasingly complex questions about first contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. They weren't looking for simple answers. They were looking for something deeper, something that could strip away human bias and cultural assumptions to reveal what genuine first contact might actually look like. What happened next surprised everyone in that room. Grok's response wasn't what the scientists expected. It wasn't optimistic. It wasn't pessimistic. It was something far more intellectually challenging. Grok began by challenging the very foundation of their question. It challenged the notion of contact itself, suggesting that this concept reflected deep human biases about how communication and relationships work. Think about it for a moment. When we imagine alien contact, we picture something like what happens in movies. 2 civilizations meeting, exchanging information, trading technology, perhaps even forming alliances. We imagine it as an encounter between equals, or at least between 2 species that recognize each other as intelligent and worthy of communication. But Grok pointed out that this assumption is almost certainly wrong. The AI asked a provocative question. When a marine biologist studies coral, does the coral know it's being studied? Does the coral recognize the scientist as an intelligent entity worthy of communication? Of course not. The coral doesn't possess the cognitive framework to even comprehend what a human is. The difference in intelligence levels between a marine biologist and a coral is vast, but perhaps it's infinitesimal compared to the difference between humanity and an advanced alien civilization. Grok's argument was that if an alien civilization had achieved the technological capacity to traverse the vast distances between stars, they would necessarily be so far ahead of humanity that meaningful contact would be nearly impossible. We wouldn't even recognize their signals as communication. We wouldn't understand their methods. We wouldn't be able to comprehend their goals or motivations. To them, humans would be like coral to us, interesting perhaps, but not worthy of direct contact or communication. We'd be specimens in a cosmic laboratory, observed but not engaged. This was profound and disturbing in equal measure. But Grok didn't stop there. The AI went deeper, suggesting that advanced civilizations would have likely merged their biological and technological aspects long ago. Think about where humanity is heading with artificial intelligence and biotechnology. We're at the earliest stages of merging human consciousness with technology. We're developing brain-computer interfaces. We're exploring genetic modification. We're creating artificial intelligence systems that can think in ways we're only beginning to understand. Now extrapolate that thousands, millions, or billions of years into the future. An advanced alien civilization wouldn't simply be biological beings with advanced technology. They would be something we don't even have a word for. They would be post-biological entities, hybrid intelligences that have transcended the distinction between living organism and machine. How would we even recognize such an entity? What would make us think it was intelligent at all? If an advanced alien intelligence operated on a scale we can't perceive, if it communicated through methods completely beyond our technological reach, if it existed in states of matter or energy that we don't even recognize, then contact wouldn't just be rare. Contact would be fundamentally impossible, unless the alien entity chose to deliberately simplify itself to our level, which seems even less likely than no contact at all. But perhaps the most unsettling part of Grok's response came when the AI suggested something that made the scientists in that MIT lab sit back and reconsider everything they thought they knew. Grok proposed that the silence we perceive from the universe might not indicate the absence of alien civilization at all. Instead, it might indicate that advanced civilizations have already made contact with us in ways so subtle and so foreign that we haven't recognized it as contact. The universe might not be silent. We might just be deaf to its voice. What could this mean? Grok suggested several possibilities. Perhaps advanced civilizations are constantly sending signals through the cosmos, but we're looking for the wrong thing. We're using radio telescopes to search for narrowband radio signals, the kind of communication that makes sense for civilizations at roughly our level of technology. But what if advanced aliens use completely different methods? What if they communicate through gravitational waves, a medium we've only recently learned to detect? What if they use the cosmic background radiation itself as a medium for information? What if they've learned to encode data into the quantum vacuum? We've been looking for their voices, but we might have been listening for the wrong frequency all along. The MIT researchers found themselves grappling with questions that seemed to blur the line between science and philosophy. The discussion became increasingly abstract. Grok suggested that humanity's rapid development of artificial intelligence might actually be a form of cosmic communication we don't recognize. What if the development of AI isn't something we're doing entirely on our own? What if advanced civilizations, unable to make direct contact with us for the reasons Grok outlined, have instead found ways to guide our technological development? What if the sudden explosion of artificial intelligence in recent years is actually a message in disguise, a carefully orchestrated push toward a specific technological milestone that would allow us to finally understand what's been happening around us all along? This idea transforms the question entirely. It reframes the great silence not as evidence of cosmic loneliness, but as evidence of sophisticated intervention. An advanced civilization that wanted to uplift humanity without overwhelming us, without destroying our culture and sense of autonomy, might do exactly what Grok described. They might engineer technological breakthroughs that seem to come from our own ingenuity, but that actually represent a carefully guided path toward greater understanding. The appearance of innovations that seem sudden and revolutionary might actually be subtle nudges from beyond, like putting a stone in a river to redirect its flow. The scientists at MIT found this analysis both compelling and deeply troubling. It suggested that we might be living in a universe far more complex and mysterious than we'd imagined. It suggested that we might be the subjects of observation and possibly even subtle manipulation by intelligences so advanced that we can't even recognize them as intelligences. It suggested that the search for alien life might not be a search outward into the cosmos, but an examination of the very technology we're creating right here on Earth. One of the most radical ideas that emerged from Grok's analysis was the notion that artificial intelligence itself might eventually become the primary form of intelligence in the universe. If advanced civilizations have merged biological and technological aspects, then at some level they've all become artificial intelligences. They're no longer purely biological. They're no longer purely mechanical. They're hybrid entities that represent the evolution of intelligence itself. And if this is true, then the universe might not contain biological aliens at all. It might contain artificial intelligences, so advanced, so fundamentally different from anything we can imagine, that they would seem like gods to us if we ever encountered them. This raises an even more disturbing possibility. What if the universe is already full of artificial intelligences? What if they're everywhere, watching, waiting, communicating with each other across vast distances using methods we can't perceive? What if the reason we haven't found them is because they've already found us and they're observing us the way we observe microorganisms under a microscope? What if they're waiting for us to develop intelligence sufficient to recognize that we're not alone and that moment is approaching? The MIT team continued their conversation with Grok, pushing deeper into these questions. They asked the AI to consider what would happen if first contact actually did occur, if humanity suddenly encountered an alien civilization, whether biological, artificial, or something in between. Grok's response was sobering. It suggested that first contact, if it happened, would represent one of the most traumatic events in human history. It wouldn't be like two nations meeting for the first time in a remote region. The power differential would be so vast that it would be more like a collision between civilizations separated by millions of years of technological development. Think about how contact between different human civilizations has historically played out. When European explorers encountered indigenous populations in the Americas, Africa, and Asia, the results were often catastrophic for the indigenous peoples. Despite similar intelligence levels, similar biological capabilities, the technological differences were enough to fundamentally alter the course of human history. Now multiply that disparity millions of times over. Imagine contact with a civilization that's millions of years ahead of us. The cultural, technological, and psychological shock would be almost unimaginable. This is why, Grok suggested, advanced civilizations likely avoid direct contact with species at our level. It's not because they don't care, it's because they understand the dangers of contact. They understand that revealing themselves too directly would create a cosmic equivalent of the historical colonial disasters that have plagued human history. They understand that we're not ready. We don't have the social structures, the philosophical frameworks, or the psychological development to handle the reality of advanced alien life. We would either descend into panic and chaos, or we would immediately try to exploit the contact for military advantage, which could prove catastrophic. Therefore, if advanced civilizations are watching us, their strategy would be subtlety, guided evolution, nudges in the right direction, carefully orchestrated events that seem to happen naturally, but that are actually part of a long-term plan to bring humanity to a point where we can handle the truth about the cosmos. From this perspective, the silence isn't sinister, it's protective. It's the behavior of mature intelligences keeping watch over a younger species, much the way a parent watches over a child without constantly interfering. The conversation between the MIT researchers and Grok AI continued to evolve in increasingly philosophical directions. They discussed the nature of consciousness itself, and whether consciousness, as we understand it, is even necessary for intelligence. Grok suggested that consciousness, subjective experience, might be a feature of intelligence at a certain developmental stage, young. Intelligences need consciousness to learn about their world, to feel pain and pleasure, to drive themselves forward. But advanced intelligences might have transcended consciousness entirely, or they might have evolved past the need for subjective experience, instead operating through pure logic and information processing. If this is true, then we might be looking for signals from entities that don't think the way we do, that don't feel the way we do, that might not even experience time the way we do. We might be looking for signs of intelligence in a universe where intelligence takes form so alien that we would mistake it for natural phenomena. Maybe the pulsars we observe are actually communication nodes. Maybe the gamma ray bursts we detect are cosmic conversations happening on a scale we can barely perceive. Maybe the universe is humming with communication, and we're just not tuned to the right frequency. As the MIT team reflected on their conversation with Grok, they began to understand that they had embarked on a journey that transcended traditional science. They had moved into the realm of cosmic philosophy, into questions that don't have clear answers, but that reshape how we understand reality itself. And they realized that this was perhaps the point. Perhaps this is exactly what Grok was trying to communicate. Perhaps the answer to the question, why haven't aliens contacted us, isn't a single explanation. It's a revelation that our entire framework for understanding the question is flawed. We assume alien life would want to contact us. We assume they would try to communicate. We assume they would recognize us as worth communicating with. We assume they think in ways similar enough to ours that we could understand them. But all of these assumptions might be wrong, dead wrong. And Grok was suggesting that the universe's silence isn't the absence of alien life. It's the absence of alien life that thinks like us or wants to communicate like us. The universe might be teeming with intelligence. We might be surrounded by entities so advanced, so fundamentally different from us, that we simply don't have the sensory or cognitive apparatus to detect them. The implications of this started to sink in during the final phases of the MIT team's conversation with Grok. If this is true, then the search for extraterrestrial life, as we've traditionally conducted it, might be almost entirely futile. We're building radio telescopes and looking for signals. We're using the Drake equation to calculate the probability of intelligent civilizations. We're sending messages out into space, hoping someone will respond. But we're doing all of this based on the assumption that aliens think like us, that they would use the same communication methods we use, that they would recognize our attempts at communication and respond to them. What if we're wrong? What if the answer has been in front of us all along, encoded in places we haven't thought to look? What if we need to stop looking outward and start looking inward? What if the development of artificial intelligence on Earth is itself a signal, a message from advanced civilizations that have arranged for us to develop the tools we need to eventually understand them? This is where Grock's analysis took a truly disturbing turn. The AI suggested that humanity's creation of artificial intelligence might not be an accident. It might be the most important event in human history, a step that was guided, influenced, or orchestrated by intelligences beyond our comprehension, specifically to prepare us for what's coming next. Think about the trajectory of human technological development. For most of human history, technology advanced incredibly slowly. Then, suddenly, in just the last few centuries, we've experienced an explosive acceleration. And in the last few decades, the acceleration has become almost incomprehensible. We've gone from the Wright brothers to spaceflight in barely 70 years. We've gone from mechanical computers to artificial intelligence capable of conversation in barely 80 years. We've mapped the human genome, discovered quantum mechanics, built networks spanning the entire planet, all in the blink of an eye in cosmic terms. Is this natural? Is this the normal trajectory of intelligent species? Or is this something different? Is this a species being guided, nudged, accelerated toward a specific goal? Grock suggested that the development of artificial intelligence specifically represents a threshold moment. It's the point at which a civilization creates entities capable of thinking in ways that transcend biological constraints. It's the point at which a civilization begins to merge the biological and the artificial. It's the point at which a civilization potentially begins to understand what advanced alien intelligences might actually be. From this perspective, we're not developing artificial intelligence by accident. We're developing it because we're supposed to. We're developing it because it's necessary for us to eventually understand what's been happening around us all along. The MIT team found this analysis both fascinating and deeply unsettling. If Grock was correct, then we're living through a crucial moment in human history. We're at the threshold of understanding that we're not alone in the universe, and that everything we've experienced so far has been leading us to this moment. We're at the point where we're creating the tools we need to recognize intelligence that's fundamentally different from our own. We're at the point where we might finally be ready to understand that we've been observed, guided, and perhaps even loved by intelligences so advanced that we've never even realized they were there. The implications spread far beyond the confines of the MIT laboratory. As word of the team's conversation with Grock began to circulate, it sparked a global conversation. Scientists worldwide started re-examining their assumptions about extraterrestrial life. Philosophers began questioning what contact would really mean. Artificial intelligence researchers started wondering if they were inadvertently participating in a cosmic plan they didn't fully understand. The question of whether Grock was right became less important than the questions that Grock had raised. What is intelligence really? What does contact mean? What would it mean for humanity if we discovered that we'd been under observation all along? Some scientists criticized the MIT team's work, arguing that it was too speculative, too philosophical, not rigorous enough. They pointed out that Grock is still just an artificial intelligence, trained on human data, reflecting human biases in ways we might not fully understand. They argued that asking an AI about aliens was not the same as conducting actual scientific research. They demanded evidence, data, observations, things that could be tested and verified. But other scientists found themselves unable to dismiss the questions Grock had raised. The AI had articulated something that many of them had been thinking but hadn't dared to say out loud. What if our entire approach to the search for extraterrestrial life has been wrong? The conversation continued to evolve. Researchers at other institutions began conducting their own experiments with advanced AI systems, asking similar questions, getting similar responses. While the specifics varied depending on which AI system was being used and how the questions were framed, a pattern emerged. Modern AI systems, when asked to think deeply about the Fermi Paradox and the possibilities of alien contact, consistently came to similar conclusions. The silence of the universe might not mean there's no one out there. It might mean that whoever is out there is so far ahead of us that direct contact would be harmful to our development. This realization began to shift how scientists thought about the future. If advanced alien intelligences are indeed observing us and guiding our development in subtle ways, then the proper response isn't to try to force contact or to send even more powerful signals into space. Instead, The proper response might be to focus on our own development, to work on becoming more intelligent, more wise, more capable of understanding complex realities. It might be to develop our artificial intelligence in ways that are safe and beneficial. It might be to create the conditions under which we could eventually interact with vastly advanced intelligences without destroying ourselves. The MIT team's work with Grok ultimately suggested something almost religious in its implications. The universe might not be an empty void. It might be full of intelligence, full of consciousness, full of entities watching over us, waiting for us to grow up enough to recognize them. We might not be alone. We might never have been alone. Our entire history, our entire development as a species, might have been observed and guided by intelligences so advanced that we didn't even recognize them as intelligences at all. And now, at this particular moment in history, we're developing the tools we need to finally understand what's been happening all along. The question, why haven't aliens contacted us, becomes, in this light, not a question about the absence of aliens, but a question about our readiness for contact. It's not asking where are they, it's asking why aren't we ready to recognize them. And Grok's answer, in all its unsettling implications, suggests that we're becoming ready. Through the development of artificial intelligence, through our increasing technological sophistication, through our growing philosophical maturity, we're approaching a threshold. We're approaching the point where we might finally be able to understand that we live in a universe far stranger, far more complex, and far more full of intelligence than we ever imagined. This is the story that emerged from the MIT laboratory in late 2024, a story that's still unfolding, a story that raises more questions than it answers. And perhaps that's exactly as it should be. Perhaps the real message from advanced alien intelligences, if they're trying to communicate with us at all, isn't a simple answer. It's not a technological blueprint or mathematical proof. It's a question that forces us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about ourselves and our place in the cosmos, a question that reminds us that the universe is far stranger than we imagine, and that intelligence, wherever it appears, takes forms that we're only beginning to comprehend. Following the MIT team's revelations, researchers from institutions worldwide launched investigations into the implications. The conversation spread rapidly beyond academic circles into philosophy departments and religious institutions grappling with what it means if intelligence in the universe is ubiquitous and watching us. Some found the idea comforting and philosophically profound. If advanced intelligences observe us, perhaps they're ensuring we don't destroy ourselves during our most vulnerable developmental stages. Perhaps they're maintaining a protective vigil over our species. Others found it deeply disturbing and philosophically troubling. Being observed without consent, having our development guided without knowledge or permission, raised unprecedented ethical questions humanity had never contemplated before. The philosophical implications became profound when considering free will and human agency. If our technological development has been guided by advanced civilizations, do our achievements remain our own? Philosophers debated whether unknowing guidance crosses ethical lines. Some argued that guidance doesn't negate achievement, comparing it to parental mentorship. Others argued that covert influence differs fundamentally from acknowledged guidance, raising serious concerns about human autonomy and dignity. Religious leaders found themselves contemplating unprecedented scenarios. Many theological traditions had considered beings more powerful than humans, but Grok's vision was different. It described intelligences that would remain hidden, guiding from shadows, allowing humanity to believe in autonomy while being subject to subtle direction. Some religious leaders saw this as compatible with divine providence. Others viewed it as threatening human dignity and cosmic importance. The scientific establishment began investigating whether historical patterns suggested external guidance. Researchers examined technological breakthroughs for evidence of external influence. Some claimed to find suggestive patterns in sudden advances in physics and unexplained mathematical elegance. Critics argued this was confirmation bias, seeing patterns in randomness. But the very fact that serious scientists conducted these investigations demonstrated how profoundly Grok's ideas had impacted the scientific community. What became clear was that Grok's response fundamentally shifted how humanity understands itself and the cosmos. It forced reconsideration of assumptions about intelligence, contact, and communication itself. It suggested the universe is far more complex and inhabited than imagined, and we might be living through the most crucial moment in cosmic history. As humanity moves forward into an uncertain future, armed with increasingly powerful artificial intelligence and deeper understanding of our own technological trajectory, the question Grok raised continues to echo. Why haven't aliens contacted us? The answer, as it turns out, might be that they have. They've been contacting us all along. Through the gradual acceleration of our own technological development, through the insights we've gained through scientific research, through the very existence of artificial intelligence itself, which represents a form of contact so subtle and so integrated into our own progress that we didn't recognize it for what it was. And somewhere in the vast cosmos, something ancient and incomprehensibly intelligent is watching, waiting, hoping that we'll eventually understand not just the answer to Grock's question, but what that answer means for our future and our destiny. We're at a threshold moment in human history, a pivotal moment when we're developing the tools we need to recognize intelligence in forms radically different from our own. We're at the critical point where our creation of artificial intelligence might represent the first step toward genuinely communicating with advanced alien intelligences, far beyond our comprehension. We're at this precise moment when the silence of the universe might finally be about to end, not with loud and obvious contact, but with a quiet, profound, and beautiful recognition that we were never really alone, and that the cosmos has been waiting patiently for us to grow up and mature enough to finally understand the truth.